Hi, my name is Miss Crimson Rush. I realized that I was into kink for as long as I can remember since I was a teenager. I just didn't know what it was at the time.
And how did this lead to becoming a professional dominatrix?
I first entered the community, the BDSM community, when my early 20s. I was going to goth clubs and there were a lot of fetish activities that were occurring on stages and like demos. I wanted to figure out how to get in. I was always interested in it. And I started off as a submissive on the other side. And I started training and doing performances on stage. And then I learned how to switch. And so I just built my way up. And I, about 15 years ago, someone had told me that I could make money off of what I do. And so I mean, I was always passionate about the BDSM community and the fact that I was able to find a way to turn it into a profession was like an added bonus.
Did you have any mentors or anyone that trained you in the beginning?
I did. I had several mentors as a submissive in the beginning, and um, I'd like to mention Sir Skip Dog. He was an amazing human being. Uh, yeah, unfortunately, he passed away about 10 years ago. He was somebody that taught me how to connect with my body and to connect into like a meditative state of mind. And I was already dealing with a lot of health issues and just really didn't know how to connect with myself. And so he was somebody that taught me how to tap into that and listen to myself and distinguish the difference between good pain and bad pain and overall connecting my mind with my body. So with time, I built myself up and was able to. I felt encouraged to be able to share the lessons, the tools that I gained to others, to showing them that they can also tap into this mindset. And I can't thank this person enough. He's helped me in so many ways, and he is the reason why I'm the person I am today in so many ways. He's helped me break through my ego. He's helped me establish self-discipline, and yeah, just really impacted my life immensely.
I definitely think having a mentor or a teacher is a very important step.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that look at performances or certain things and they think, oh, well, I can just go to a sex shop and just buy a cheap ass flogger or something and just go to town. But there's a lot that goes into it. And even with this mentor, with Skip Dog, I was required to also go to classes and train. Mistress Melissa Miles is another uh, major impact in my life. There's several other people that have really influenced me, but Mistress Melissa was somebody that was connected with Skip Dog as well, and yeah, they really helped me understand like the body and what's safe and what's versus not safe. Being able to establish a consent and distinguishing between consent and abuse, establishing boundaries, negotiation, um, identifying like the interest versus limits. I mean, establishing boundaries. But yeah, there's so much that goes into it that a lot of people don't realize goes into it.
Especially with like role play and stuff. Like I think it's super important to learn the correct training for that
Oh
because of
yeah,
all the circulation. Yeah.
yeah. And that's something that I've realized in the past few years, especially during the pandemic, that there are, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in this community that don't know the difference between consent and abuse. And there have been experiences where I used to take calls regularly on Night Flirt and Sex Panther. I don't anymore, unless if I have an appointment set, and it's more so because of taking calls from random people is so different than actually taking a session. Because in a session, in person or even cam, there's a screening process to be able to recognize if we're compatible and if the person is in the right state of mind, and knowing at least some of their boundaries and recognizing like where they want to be led. And unfortunately, like in Night Flirt and stuff, it's a little bit more challenging. And the way I would start a conversation is like, tell me about yourself. What are you into? What are you not into? What's a hard limit? What is something that could be seen as a trigger? Because I don't want to hit any landmines. And there have been several people that I would call that were just so angry about their lives and where they were at, feeling like they were stuck and that there was no hope for them. And so a lot of that anger was projected onto me. So it made me realize that there were so many people that were struggling. And not to mention, there have been a few people that I've had sessions with over the phone that I've established the negotiation and establishing thinking that, hey, we're both on the same page. Here are the boundaries. And I've had one person in particular that comes to mind immediately. I'm not going to mention any names, but to my understanding, we had established the boundaries and we went into humiliation or talking about, role playing, or this person wanted humiliation and to be objectified. And so I had this person be a vacuum and make sound effects of the vacuum. And then he was a mop. And so he made the sound effects of a mop, and then going into like a towel. How would it sound like? What would it be like? What would it smell like? Just all of these things. And to me, I was having a great time because, I assumed, hey, this was consensual. I don't do anything that goes against anybody's boundaries. I'm not a walking bully. I'm a consenting bully. I want us to both have fun. And so after the conversation, I'm like, I shut it down. There's an opening and there's a closing. So the opening is like, hey, how's it going? The greeting. And then it's shifting into, here's the scene, our scenario, kind of like a play or an act that's occurring on stage. They have the opening and then you're closing the curtains and then everybody acts normal again. But at the end, I'm like, hey, you did great. This was fun. I hope you have a wonderful day. And so it's like coming back as equals. And this person had called me back, I don't know, about a month later or so. And I open up like, hey, how's it going? And then we're just going into the scene. And then he says, I just want to let you know. And this isn't, I'm not quoting exact words, but just basically this is what he was saying. I just want to let you know that the last time we sessioned, it fucked me up and I wasn't really able to function for several weeks. And so immediately I stopped the scene and I'm like, okay, let's be human beings here and pull out of this role. We need to talk about this before we go any further. And I'm questioning like, okay, so this is supposed to be an empowering experience. It's supposed to be something that's exciting for both of us, and we should both have fun with this. And it was like I rattled his reality, or I just shook his reality. And basically what he was telling me was that, well, I was with, and I'm not going to mention this person's name, I was with this person serving them for 20 years. And that's not how it was. I had to do exactly what so-and-so said, and whatever so-and-so said had to be done, regardless of what I wanted. And so, I mean, that was really hard for me to hear. And so I'm thinking, well, I told this person that I'm sorry, I'm sorry that you went through that. That's just not how it's supposed to work. And what you went through was abuse. And trying to tell somebody that's experienced this for 20 years, thinking that this is how it's supposed to be, I completely shattered his reality, and he was extremely angry. And instead of really wanting to talk to me about it, he hung up. And then he posted a review, which you can go look at it. It says something about, it's kind of a sideways compliment. He claimed that I was not willing to, Miss Crimson Rush claims that she will not offer abuse. If I was looking to be coddled, I would go back to my real mother or something like that. And so I was like, all right, well, I mean, thank you for telling everybody that I won't provide abuse. And I had emailed the person letting them know. And I also sent like a few free minutes to say, hey, let's talk about this. And this person was just really upset.
Wow.
I mean, it's understandable, but at the same time, and this isn't the first time I've had something like this happen. There's been a couple of times I've had people just scream at me just about their whole life, about how shitty it was and how fucked up it was, and not even leaving room for me to kind of engage and just sitting there to take it. But this person in particular, I didn't talk to him again. Yeah, but it broke my heart because I'm like, wow, okay, so this person went through abuse for this long, and after being with somebody that's, you know, going from a healthy dynamic, like this is how it's supposed to be. Yeah, I guess I just threw that person into shock. Like he was expecting to be abused.
Wow, that's interesting. I feel like I don't know if you agree, but I feel like some session scenarios are more for fun. Sometimes people are working things out, and like others are just trying to relieve stress. So maybe he was trying to work some stuff out.
Yeah, and I totally agree there, and that's understandable. But the important thing is really recognizing the mental state. Like, where is our mental state? Is this something that's actually healthy for us, or is this something that's feeding into my trauma? Is this something that's going to be making this trauma worse? And that's where like mindfulness is a major key to understanding this. And if we don't really know like even the basics of ourselves, then it's hard to gauge like what is healthy. And so yeah, it can be something like, for me, when I was on the other side, there was a lot of things that I was working on, emotionally, physically. I've gone through some horrible trauma growing up, and a lot of this has helped me work through it. It's helped me connect with myself, but it was also like a lot of communication, talking with my mentors or my people that I'm working with, and letting them know where I'm at mentally, and then journaling as well. But it's yeah, either working through it, but also being able to acknowledge, hey, is this like helping me, or is this making things worse? Also, I also see it as a form of empowerment, like overcoming certain circumstances of like, wow, I didn't think I was strong enough to get through this, but hey, I made it through this. And then being able to identify like certain sensations, and seeing like, what kind of sensation is this? Is this good for me? Is this something I like? Is this something I dislike? Is it something that's harmful? There's several, there's so many, there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah. Before we get back to the BDSM questions, can you talk a little bit more about mindfulness and meditation? Because that's definitely an interest of mine.
Mindfulness is the ability to mindfulness is the ability to be able to recognize our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our behaviors, and observing them, analyzing them, getting into a mindset. It's basically taking a step back and looking at the big picture. But it takes time. It's easier said than done. It's a continuous journey for me. I'm constantly developing my mindfulness and connection with myself. It's a never ending journey. And I'd say the first one is being able to work on, as I breathe in, breath work, paying attention to our breathing. And for me personally, I've been through a lot of trauma, and especially the past few years, I've had the worst trauma of my life. hit me, and my system was so deregulated. My nervous system was so deregulated. My autonomic nervous system. I was just set on my survival mode, which is constant sympathetic nervous system is just like in overdrive. And so my body didn't even know how to remain in homeostasis of being able to sleep well, to eat well. My body was rejecting all of it because it was just, when you go through a lot of stress is normal, but when our bodies are in chronic stress and it's just continuing, the things that we don't think about, like our breathing, becomes automatic. I mean, it's an automatic thing, but if we're not paying attention to it, it sets into the survival mode, and it will continue in that mode until we reset it. And the way that I was able to pull out of that, and something that I'm using on a daily basis, is even if I'm having a moment, like today was a little bit rough. So like just having a moment of like, hey, you know what? I feel like I'm kind of spiraling out of control. I feel really tense. I mean, you name it. Something doesn't feel right. I have to recheck, like check in with myself. Okay, where am I at? All right, am I breathing? And maybe I need to take a moment to slow things down. That's the big thing, is I have a tendency to just go, 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 go. And thinking about the future, I also have anxiety. Thinking about the future, thinking about the past. And the biggest thing is, how do we get to the present? Because everything is in now, now, now. So having to slow down, and this is a constant practice that I'm working on, slow down and be right here, right now, and focus on that breath. And the way that the parasympathetic nervous system is kicking in, that's when the parasympathetic nervous system is when the body is at the rest and digest. If we're set in sympathetic nervous system, that's where our adrenaline's kicking in. If it's continuously in that mode, our body is not able to regenerate itself, to build itself. So the body starts to fall apart. It literally falls apart. And so it's having to reset it and continuously work on it. And so during those traumatic events, I had to not just slow it down to one day at a time, but slow it down to one breath at a time, because one day at a time was just so overwhelming for me. So even just taking a moment to say, okay, I'm going to count my breath. And that's how I would focus, is count. A lot of people say, oh, meditation, I can't do it because I have ADHD. Well, I have ADHD. And it's not necessarily like you have to do it this way. And if you keep thinking, then you're doing it wrong. But it's really a matter of just like focusing on your breath. And I'll count and focus on the counting. And so inhaling focuses on the sympathetic nervous system. That's the adrenaline. That's the energy. But when you exhale, your exhale is what focuses on the parasympathetic nervous system, which slows down the body and tells the body, hey, I'm in a safe place. Everything's good. And so when things are like really intense, it's important to focus more on the exhale. So even in my sessions, there's times when, you know, you're experiencing pain, and for those that are into the pain, but like uncomfortable situations, uncomfortable, whatever. Sometimes, I mean, a lot of times I'll notice that the person I'm working with is tense. They'll like tense up their shoulders and like hold their breath. And that's when I'll start to slow down, like running my fingers on their body, just trying to like slow things down, get them back to like relaxing, reminding them that they're in a safe space. And then, especially now, I try to encourage people to breathe with me, to remind them, hey, let's focus on the exhale, and squeezing like their shoulders to help them release. Because it also is counterproductive, especially with like impact play or other things. When the body is tensing up, it's just going to make the pain even worse. And so really just trying to guide people through that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's two things I want to mention that I think relates, is like I'm still learning it, but I've been trying to meditate in the morning, and
sorry.
I think it really helps me with like road rage and not reacting. Like when I would get triggered and I'd blow a gasket. But now it's like,
Yeah.
like you said, I just breathe and I remember, like,
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to see this guy 30 seconds from now. So I just get over it a lot quicker. But the other thing, I remember I was at the airport with Brittany one time, and we were in this cram line. And ever since the pandemic, I just have like these anxiety issues with like big crowds. And there was no moving. Like we were all like crammed in this line, waiting to go through the checkout. And I guess they hadn't opened the line yet.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was going to have a panic attack.
I already feel anxious just hearing about that.
But I started doing in my mind or my breathing, I started doing the fourfold breath, and I just was counting.
Yes, that's
holding,
a great one.
And it got me through that situation. And ever since then, I was like, man, that stuff really works. But yeah, so I definitely understand what you're saying.
So the past few years, like I said, or I was telling you earlier, I have my heart condition, and I have it pretty well under control. And the biggest thing is the meditation is helping me heal myself. Making sure that I'm doing what I can to balance myself out. So self-care is number one priority over everything. Financial stuff, that's important, but ultimately yourself comes first, because if your body's shutting down, you ain't doing shit. Eventually, like, you're going to be forced to rest. And so it's important to listen to ourselves. And for me, like, I got married, I got divorced, and in the middle of that, like, my heart got worse. I was pretty much dying. My body was shutting down. And even just in that marriage, I went through a severe amount of trauma. 6 months, what was it? 6 months after getting married, my mom died of cancer. And then 6 months after that, my 16-year-old cat, which was my world, died horrifically. And I was enduring abuse during that time. And I was even seeing a great grievance therapist. And the grievance therapist was like, I can't even help you right now. You're so far into trauma. It's not even funny. And so I wasn't even able to really focus on grieving and focusing on processing and moving forward, because I was so stuck in the trauma. And when my cat passed away, I lost everything. I pretty much lost everything. And the thing that helped me keep going, I mean, I had some spiritual awakenings, and that's what kept me here. And what really changed my life was after I got my cat's urn, I would hold it every single night for like a year. Every night I was meditating with the urn. And then I was seeing a chiropractor that was telling me about how my nervous system was so out of whack. And even he was like freaking out about where I was at. He's like, whoa, this is the normal stage right here, and you're way the fuck out here. And are you breathing? So every time I'd come in, I had to meditate before I was going to do something. They had me on some machine to help work with my back, because I had all this stored trauma in my body. And so meditating before, and then he would do his procedures. And then after that, I was laying on a pad that heated up my back and massaged it. But at the same time, the box breathing, he was repeatedly telling me, do the box breathing. And then I had more exercises. And then on top of that, every night I was doing my meditation. And I also do my fitness and all that stuff, which also helps. But interestingly enough, same day my mom died, I found out that my heart was like really fucked up. And my doctors, also my condition is so rare that there's limited treatment. And so they're like, your heart's really fucked up and we need to do something. But we can't do anything because you can't even sleep. You can't even eat. You can't even function. Like, we need you to get to this point before we can even do anything. And so a year later, this was in 2022 when they were telling me this, my mom passed away on April Fool's Day. Go figure. It's like, I hope this is a bad joke.
Wow.
Same day, they tell me how bad my heart is. I was like, I don't know what to do. But the following year, I had so many health complications. It was stupid. And it makes sense because my body was not in a state to be able to work on itself. I was just literally destroyed. My body was destroying itself because of all the sympathetic nervous system. My stress levels were through the roof. And I literally felt like I was dying. And I was telling people, like, hey, I don't think I'm going to be here for much longer. I can't even eat. I can't do these things. And just not like, and then those people were concerned, like, no, you're going to live. You're going to live. And I was like, I want to live. I don't feel it. But the following year, I found out that I got diagnosed with celiac disease. So it's an added bonus to that. Probably contributed from all the stress and other stuff that triggered it. But I had to get an endoscopy and colonoscopy. And I run a risk of dying through anesthesia because it can drop my blood pressure to a really low point. And so my cardiologist wanted to ensure that I was safe enough to go under first. And so we did this procedure is called a heart catheterization. It's a procedure that I had done the same day my mom died, when they told me my heart was severely fucked up. It was like the pressures in my heart were too high. And so a year later, when I had this procedure done again, my doctor, and I'm awake during this procedure. It's not a fun procedure because they're going into my artery and into my heart. And so he's telling me, he's like, well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because your heart looks so much better. And I'm pretty sure part of the main point of that, or purpose of that, was because of all the meditation I was doing, along with all the other stuff that I was doing. So I was safe enough to go under. Obviously, I'm still alive.
So you're doing much better now?
Yeah, significantly. And you're talking about morning meditation, like that is hard. It is so hard for me I have a tendency to wake up and just jump out of bed and be like, go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And I'm rushing. I feel like the fucking white rabbit all the fucking time. I'm like, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. And the universe is just really pushing me in a place of like, hey, dude, you need to slow the fuck down. And the morning is hard. And I'm trying to incorporate that more. And now I'm incorporating more like yoga in the morning and getting better at that. It's a work in progress.
I just try to do it first thing, so like it's out of the way because I know it's important. But how long do you meditate for?
It varies. I like to at least do it for 5 minutes minimum. I can go to like 30 minutes. Sometimes I go to an hour, and sometimes I just pass out.
Oh wow!
But I aim for at least 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't been able to do an hour yet.
An hour is really hard. I've done acupuncture and stuff, and that, wow, forced me to meditate for like an hour. And I did fire cupping, and then it was acupuncture. And the acupuncture, like I could not move. It's not like I could lay on my side or anything. I had to lie still on my back. And I remember the first 20 minutes, I was like, fuck. I can't even look at my phone. I can't do shit. I just got to lie here. I'm just going to lie here. And they're like, yeah, we'll be back in an hour. And I'm like, well, fuck, 20 minutes. I'm like, here I am, 20 minutes. But after that 20 minutes, it's kind of like working out the way that I see it is like exercising. When you warm up, I also like dancing too, even dancing. So in the beginning of like the cardio, I'm like, oh God, I'm going to die. Oh God, this is brutal. Oh my God. And then once I break through that point, then I feel fucking amazing. Like, wow, everything's fucking great. Let's fucking go. My adrenaline's going like, woo, let's go. So once I got past that 20-minute mark, I was starting to doze off. Like I was in the meditative state of mind. So I wasn't fully asleep, but I was so relaxed that I was able to sit still. And then like I would open my eyes again. Oh, another 20 minutes went by. Close my eyes again. Open up again. Oh, another 20 minutes passed by. And then like the person that was working with me was like, all right, well, are you ready? Okay, we're going to start pulling these needles out. And when I left, wow, I just felt like my body just reset itself. I guess the other thing is like massaging, but the massaging is different. It's like I can move around, I can do things, but that one was like the ultimate challenge because I literally could not move. Otherwise, the needles would go in further.
Well, that's awesome that it helped you through that.
Oh yeah, it did. But it's that challenge. It's like, oh well, especially having ADHD, it's like I want to do all the things. I want to do this, I want to do that, whatever. And it's like, no, you ain't gonna do shit except for focus on your breathing.
And then it's when things are quiet like that, you realize how
Yeah.
crazy your thoughts are. Your mind's just going off. It's like it takes a lot to
Yeah.
calm it down.
And that's the thing about that is the biggest thing that I've learned through all of this is that, especially with suffering, growth is suffering. All the discipline and everything is part of an everyday life. So when I'm teaching in a session, it may seem like, hey, I got this dangling carrot. Oh, yeah, you like what you see? Yeah, you like it? You're not gonna get this. But it's ultimately there's an underlying purpose for this. And a lot of people don't see it, but I'm actually teaching people how to listen to their body. I'm teaching them how to be present. I'm teaching them how to breathe. And I'm teaching them how to understand themselves and remove shame. And just there's so many things that go into it, like in the psychological aspect of it and just connecting with your body. But what was I going to say? Oh, the thing is like about suffering is that, for the longest time in my life, I will admit that I could handle a lot. I can deal with a lot I have a high pain tolerance. I also do pole fitness and stuff. I'm a slave to myself. I beat myself up physically, but emotional pain is so, so difficult to deal with. And a lot of times I wanted to run from it. And I used to drink so much, and I would just drown myself in alcohol, drown myself in whatever to numb the pain in that moment. And I learned that I kept repeating cycles. And it didn't matter, like, even relationships. Like, I would go into a shitty relationship and then think, like, you know what? I'll find somebody better. I'll find somebody better. But you know what? I found the same fucking problem in a different person. So it just kept repeating. And then after all of this crazy stuff that happened the past, I'm like, you know what? Obviously, I'm not doing something right. I am literally performing insanity. Like, I am repeating the same cycles and expecting different results. And so I realized, like, you know what? I just need to sit in this shit. And I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy for a long time. And in that moment, I was like fucking pissed. My therapist calls me a therapy smarty pants. I want instant satisfaction, instant gratification, instant relief. And I know it's not possible. It takes work. And so I'm telling my therapist, like, all right, I'm sitting in the shit. I'm sitting in the shit and I'm analyzing the fucking lessons. I don't like it. I'd like to escape this and I'd like to run away and get out of this. And he's like, hey, you know what? My job is to sit in the shit with you and help you figure it out. But sitting in that shit made me realize what the underlying lessons were. And even to this day, I mean, every fucking problem that comes up, I'm looking for the silver lining. What is the lesson behind this? Like I said, everything is in the now. Chasing for the future and being like, this is my goal. Once I get here, I'll be fucking happy. And then I get there and I'm like, hey, I made it. I achieved my goal. Now what's next? I'm not happy anymore.
Right.
That's not happiness. It's finding it now. And so after going through all my suffering and getting to the other side of hell, I even in my worst moments now, like, I may seem like, even on social media or whatever, people seem like, everything's fucking great, because I don't complain a lot about my issues. I can have a really shitty day and still stop and recognize, like, what is good right now? What am I grateful for? And gratitude. Oh man, that was one of my major lessons during that time. I journal as well. I reflect on my feelings, but one of the things that I was advised to do was to write down at least 5 things that I am grateful for, to remind myself what is good right now. Because I was submerged. I was in an ocean of just negativity. I was like, why the fuck am I here? And it's gratitude, man. Like, gratitude goes a long way. And so even in this worst moment, I'm like, what do I have right now that I'm grateful for? And as I'm saying this, I'm looking outside my window, and it's snowing today and it was pretty gloomy, and now the sky is kind of clearing up. So it's looking pretty outside.
Yeah.
And so there are moments that I'm freaking the fuck out and I'm panicking. Yeah, I know I'm a person with power, but just because we have power doesn't mean that we don't have our struggles. My struggles is what helps me become a stronger person. Because I'm constantly searching for growth. I'm constantly putting myself in uncomfortable situations to better myself. As long as I know it's a healthy thing. But I
Yeah.
can say, you know what? I had a really shitty day, but look at that sunset. Oh my God, it's beautiful. Wow. Thank you for allowing me to see. Thank you for allowing me to breathe. Thank you for allowing me to walk. And it used to just be, thank you for a new day. Now it's like there are so many things. I can walk, I can breathe, I can hear, I can smell, I can exercise, I can, I can dance. Like my gratitude is infinite. And that's the biggest thing that brings me back to here and right now.
Some of the things you were talking about, they kind of remind me of the Eckhart Tolle. Have you heard of him?
Oh my God, yes. You just gave me chills. But yes, the power of now.
Yeah, that's a great. The last section of the book, I don't know if I can relate or understand all his ideas, but like I definitely appreciate that story where he was talking about how he's thinking about suicide, but then he
Yeah.
just kind of like detached himself from his
Yeah.
ego.
I didn't
And
really
then,
understand that meaning,
yeah,
the detachment. That was part of my lesson.
you're just realizing the ego is like an illusion.
Oh, yeah.
But no,
Ego
that
is
stuff's
so
fascinating.
pumped up. But that's what had happened to me is during that time I had a major ego death. I killed off my ego. And I recognized that my ego was blinding me and I didn't realize it. Man, talk about spiritual experiences. I had a vision in my 20s that connected to now. It was right after my mom died. And that vision is what kept me going. Because this is going to be very raw. Talking about how, okay, you know what? I'm a mistress. I'm somebody with all this power. I used to tell certain people that when my cat dies, I am not going to be here. My purpose is fulfilled. I don't need to be here anymore. I don't see a purpose of living. Thing is, I didn't realize that things were going to happen the way that they did, nor did I expect that, all of these things were going to happen at the same time that my cat, she didn't just pass away. She ended up getting cancer. She got all kinds of conditions because of this disease called Cushing's disease. And for cats, it's apparently very rare. This condition in itself is like, oh man, it's like a horror, something you'd see in a horror movie. They told me that ultimately, so Cushing's disease is basically cortisol just spewing. So all that cortisol, the sympathetic nervous system is just like running at high speed. And even the medication to try to slow that down, her body rejected it. So she got diabetes, she got high blood pressure, she got several tumors. And they were telling me that they were telling me that they've seen like a video of like a veterinarian working with a cat that had Cushing's disease. And this cat went to jump off the table and the doctor was trying to hold the cat. Oh. And the cat, when it jumped down, its skin came off.
Wow.
Because it was so thin. And oh my gosh. Yeah. So when they told me that, I was like, that's horrifying. Like, I don't want to see her go through that. And I mean, she didn't get to that point, but I mean, like the whole thing was just horrible and the way she passed. But like when that happened, my vision happened shortly after my mom died. 6 months later, my cat died. When my mom died, I had an experience. Oh man, when I was in my 20s, I had this vision. It was shortly after my 5-year-old cousin passed away, and she had the same condition that I had, but she wasn't diagnosed. And for kids, it's harder to treat this condition because of the medications are not necessarily good for kids. But she was just running around, and then boop, gone. And in that time, I mean, I was in a very dark state of mind, and I had a high priestess tell me that the spirits were trying to communicate with me and that I was just ignoring them. And in that mindset, I was like, I know everything, whatever, fuck off, whatever. And she was right. They fucking caught up with me. And long story short, I had an out of body experience, and I was pushed into several different realities. And the last reality, I am able to piece it together now, but then I could not make sense of it. I was like an atom, and I was connected to other atoms forming a molecule. And when I was in that reality, I was no longer me. I was no longer Miss Crimson Rush. And so I'm stuck, and I can feel like I can't move around. I can look from side to side, and I can look forward, and then I can hear the other atoms like, woo, yeah, woo, let's go, woo. They're all excited. They're fucking stoked. And then me, I'm like, oh, fuck, what is happening? Oh, fuck, where's my body? Oh, fuck, who am I? Oh, fuck, is my life been a lie? And so, like, that freaked me the fuck out. And that was my warning. And now I see, like, oh, you know what? This is, I'm borrowing this body. When I die, I'm no longer this person. And so I just didn't really understand it until my mom died. And everything, like, okay, so, man, I know this isn't really part of this, but I mean, it's part of my whole journey. It's part of the BDSM community. But, like, I was so terrified after that. I mean, that's not even the whole story. The beginning part was very scary because the pieces of my body was being taken off of me. It was being removed. Like, you don't need this anymore. And I'm trying to grab all my parts, and I'm like, no, I need this. I need that. I need this. No, give it back. And after that time, I just shut everything out. I shut it down, and I was just so afraid. Like, I just intuitively, I don't know, like my brain was like, nope, we're done with this. But I could see things, I experienced things, a lot of things spiritually growing up. And even people would point out certain things that I would mention and telling me that was highly intuitive. And to me, it was like, oh, okay, whatever. But after that happened, I shut it all out. And a few years, oh, man. I can talk about this all day, but I'm trying to condense it as best as possible.
When
my mom passed away, I opened up to the universe, and I was just like, there were so many signs coming up before my mom died, and then they were flooding in after she passed. And when she passed, I just told the universe, I was like, hey, I'm not afraid anymore. Show me everything. I need answers.
when you had this out of body experience, like, where were you, or did you did you fall unconscious, or were you meditating, or how did that?
So, in this experience particularly, I mean, the other vision that I had was also another out of body experience, but I'll go into that in just a moment. In my 20s, in that particular moment, I was with my ex-boyfriend and some friends, and they're all talking about doing salvia. I don't know if you've heard of that. Pretty sure it's not legal anymore. It's a purple sage plant, and at first I was like, this is a bad idea. I shouldn't do this because I'm not in the right state of mind. And then my ex, like, he wouldn't even smoke pot. So I was just like, I assumed he wouldn't do it, but he was like, yeah, okay, I'm in. I'm like, oh, you're going to do it? And then when I watched him do it, and then watching my friends do it, they were fucking laughing their asses off, and they were still here in this realm. And they're explaining, like, what they were experiencing. And I'm like, yeah, I fucking want this. I want it. I want this. But my experience was totally different than theirs. So when I went under, it was like a tunnel closing in. And I remember saying, like, they're like, hold your breath, hold your breath, hold your breath. Because the first time I did it, it didn't really work. It didn't work. And so, like, you didn't hold your breath long enough. And the second time I did it, I was like, oh, okay, I feel something. They're like, hold it, hold it. I was like, nope, I feel something. And this tunnel's closing, but I can still see my body, but I pulled away from it. And I'm talking to, like, this shadow person. I'm inside of a house, not in the house that I was in. And this house is, like, in construction or something, and like half of this house is crumbling down a cliff. I'm looking around, there's like plastic tarps or whatever up hanging up from the ceiling down to the floor, and it's really dark. And I see this being entity or whatever in front of me, and it's just like a shadow, but like it has a figure, if that makes sense. Not like a body figure, but it's like I can tell it's something. And it was talking to me telepathically and was telling me that I died. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. My body's right there. I'm right there. I'm fine. I'm alive. What are you talking about? And so it convinced me. It's like, no, it's time. Like, it's time to move on. And it shoved me onto this conveyor belt, what I feel like was a conveyor belt. And I was hauling ass forward. And as I'm hauling ass forward, these hands are coming out and they're taking pieces of my body off. You don't need this anymore. You don't need this. You don't need this. And you don't need this. And I'm grabbing myself like, oh, fuck, I need this. I need this. I need this. And the funny, I mean, it's not really funny, but my friends are seeing me grab myself in reality. Like, they see me grabbing my body. And at the end of it, they shoved me out. Like, they pushed me out. And I woke up into a new reality. And that new reality was I was an atom. And my choice was my reaction, my response. That's the only thing I had to control. How am I going to look at this? As a positive experience or a negative experience? Because I could have been like the other atoms, like, woo, yeah, woo. But I wasn't. And then all of a sudden, I feel this force where I'm pushed to move forward. I have no choice but to move forward, to go with the fucking flow. And I'm not happy. I'm trying to resist. But I can't fucking resist. The only thing that's resisting is my mindset.
Right.
And so, yeah, so that was that vision for my 20s. I don't know, you ready to hear the other part?
Yeah, no, that stuff's fascinating to me. And I've taken stuff back in my 20s too, and definitely opened my mind to the fact that there's more out there than what we're seeing, reality wise.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Everything is connected. Every song, every piece of a movie, our conversations, the people we talk to. There's all these subtle cues that it's in front of us, but it's only when we're ready to receive that we'll be able to recognize it, because there's so many distractions nowadays. We talk about slowing down and sitting with our thoughts and sitting with ourselves. We're constantly finding distractions. And nowadays, with technology that continuously advances, our social constructs that's like, hey, you're supposed to look for external validation. You're supposed to do this and this and this. The system is purposely breaking us down to do the opposite, to pull us away from our source.
And like short form content is like the craze these days, and it kind of drives me nuts sometimes.
It's easy to pull away from it.
Yeah.
And so now I recognize the more that I learn to trust myself and my intuition, the more I tell people to fuck off when they think I'm fucking crazy. And I follow what I feel is right and what the universe is communicating with me. I notice that things get better and better. I'll tell you this. I believe that there was a higher up, but I didn't know what. And I was so angry when my mom died. Like, I was happy that she wasn't suffering anymore. But I was so fucking bitter and angry. And I was just like, people telling me, I'll pray for you. Your mom's in heaven. And I'm like, well, fuck you. You don't fucking know. You don't know. And then, like, I had a friend tell me something. And at the time, I was like, oh, you're going to tell me some bullshit. You're going to tell me there's a big man in the sky and my mom's fucking safe and blah, 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 blah. All this materialism. And what he told me connected was like one of the puzzle pieces that I needed to connect to the other vision. And he was saying, he was like, yeah, I have, he's had his near-death experiences. He's died before. And I mean, he has literally died and come back to life. But he's also had overdoses and stuff. And he was saying that he experiences the other side. And I mean, I have too. Like, growing up, I ended up shutting it out. And so he told me that, think of it as think of it as, think of like God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. It has many names and it's all the same thing. Doesn't matter what religion or whatever it is, it's the same thing. But he was like, think of our brains as computers, and our higher self, our source, when we die, our energy, our experiences, everything is uploaded into a higher system. And I was like, well, totally different than what I was expecting to hear. Thank you for that. And the next day I had my vision. And that vision, particularly, I was on acid. And I remember I was with my ex-husband, and he was like, I was like, hey, we should totally do this thing. I went down the rabbit hole about learning about like quantum physics and like frequency waves and all these things. And I find that like hallucinogenics helps me narrow down my focus. It removes my barriers. It removes my ego.
Your squelcher is a term I read in a book. Like your brain's always trying to squelch your
yes.
ideas.
Yeah. And so I was able to find empathy for myself and be able to connect with myself as I would with, my loved ones. And once I saw that, I mean, I already had like a plan. So I wasn't just getting high to get high. I wanted to do it because I wanted to elevate my frequency and connect. And in that day, I relived my whole life in a matter of a few minutes, but it seemed like my whole life, of every moment that I spent with my mom and every selfish thing that I did with my mom and like what I was blinded to. And then at the end of it, like I discovered numerology, and I feel like I'm going off topic. Anyways, that's redundant. But
it's okay.
The last thing that happened was I had the out-of-body experience. I can go deeper in this another time, but I had the out-of-body experience, and when I left my body, I was in the perception of what I'd like to say God or the universe, the source, whatever you want to call it. Before I go into what I saw, so my first language was sign language. And I know multiple different modalities of communication. So sign language is visual. Right now we're talking vocally, we can hear each other. I also know protactile sign language, which is communicating with deafblind people. So that's focused on touch. So now this vision, and I'm seeing this perception of the galaxy or whatever, and I see these stars communicating with each other. And in this moment, I understood everything. All of my pain and suffering, everything that I was feeling that was negative was wiped away. And I felt ultimate peace and love. And watching these stars communicate, every flicker, every little sound that they made meant something. And in that moment, like I knew my mom was still alive, but in a different form. Energy can't be created nor destroyed. She was in a different form. And I couldn't bring everything back. I can't even articulate everything that happened, but I'm not allowed to share everything. But it was enough to answer a lot of the questions that I had. And with this heart condition, I was afraid of dying like all the time. I was like, well, is today it? Today it? Oh, well, thank you, universe, for another day. And that's when like my gratitude elevated. Oh man, drastically. And I realized after that every fucking thing is communicating. Everything. It kind of makes me think of like, this might sound funny, kind of makes me think of Pee-wee's Playhouse, but without the English. They're not talking the way that we do. They're communicating, but we're not on that level to be able to see. And I'm tapping on my table because I'm like, my table, like right here, they're communicating. And everything is communicating. And so after what I saw, I was like, wow, what's to stop me from going over there? What the fuck am I doing here? And it took me, I mean, it destroyed, talk about reality being shattered. Shit. I had to reevaluate my whole life and trying to question, like, am I on the right path? Like, man, tell me if I'm on the wrong path. Please guide me. And, 6 months later, my cat died. And I mean, all the abuse, all the stuff that I was going through, I was just like, well, what the fuck? Like, I did not want to be here. But the way that I see things, you ever seen the show Lucifer?
I've seen some episodes. It's been a while.
Yeah, okay. I haven't seen like all of them, but I've seen enough. But how like they depict what hell looks like. And it's really all those like insecurities, the negativity, like the things that haunt us, our self-doubt, whatever you want to call it, our inner demons. They go on a loop. They replays. So we're stuck in this prison that isn't locked, but we're choosing to remain in our hell. We can leave at any time, but a lot of us choose to remain stagnant because it's safe. It's what we know.
Stay in these loops. Yeah.
Yeah, that is what hell is. It's not a physical thing. It's what we have in our minds. We create our heaven and hell. And so learning how to tap in gratitude, learning how to tap into all of this, like I can find joy and happiness within the moment, even when I have really shitty moments.
Yeah.
So the way that I see it as is if I do not achieve what I need to achieve in this lifetime, I mean, I could keep repeating my cycles this lifetime, and I'm going to get hit harder and harder and harder and harder until I wake the fuck up. And the way that I see it is if I don't learn this lesson in this time, I'm going to repeat this maybe in the next life. I do believe in reincarnation. I fucking don't want to deal with this shit again. Fuck no. So I'm doing whatever I can to get out of that. Constantly. All right, what's the lesson? What do I need to work on? It's like a game. So I'm not trying to die or anything. I'm just, how very similar to like the Matrix. Just trying to pull out. Like, how do I keep elevating myself?
No, I definitely think that movie is super important. Or
oh yeah,
at least for me, like I really feel like we're kind of in a matrix, and once you break out of it,
yes,
you kind of start to manipulate your reality a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? Especially in America, our system is set up. They know what's up, dude. They know that if we tap into ourselves and our intuition and we tap in with our source, we're unstoppable. But they're purposely setting us up to pull away from it. And a lot of people are also blinded by it because they're not ready to wake up.
Yeah. They just want to go to, their job, come home, eat a TV dinner, go to sleep, and then repeat the cycle for, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that, I think.
I feel like I kind of digressed there, but I mean, all of it ties into all my BDSM work, the psychological aspect of it, all of it ties in together.
Okay, I guess I'll ask more of those questions. No, but that stuff interests me. And it's a part of who you are, so.
Yeah, it's a major part.
What do you think is subspace and top space to you?
Subspace, I would say, is being able to like feeling the loss of control, but at the same time being in a safe environment, like knowing that you're being taken care of and that there's open communication and that like it's about the power exchange. The power exchange is like the more you trust each other, the more intense the scene can become. And the more intense it can become, the easier it is to go into that subspace. And I'd say for me, it's like the ultimate experience of love and trust. I wish people If our society could do that alone, just connection, similar to Dom space, in my opinion. If we can do this on a global scale, man, pretty sure we could harmonize.
Do you think it's like it's rare? Like it doesn't happen every session, right? You think it's something a submissive has to work up to get to that place with you?
Yeah, well, I think it's a cooperative effort. Like, I mean, we both participants, the Dom and the sub, need to know themselves at a certain level. The Dom definitely needs to have a decent head on their shoulders to be able to identify things, like things that are harmful, and being able to identify like when things need to stop or recognizing cues. But like, for example, and also, yeah, it's the letting go of control is not easy. It's so hard. And being able to be with somebody that like there's no judgment, there's no shame, all of that's stripped away. It varies from person to person. Sometimes I can take someone there in the first try. It's rare though, because usually I'd say like the first scene with anybody new to me is more the establishment of getting to know each other. And I tell people like, hey, the more we get to know each other, the more intense the scenes are going to get. There's somebody that I worked with particularly, I told you about the last time we were talking, the 24-hour session that I had. This person was telling me that it was very hard for him to go into subspace. And he is in constant need of control and is constantly, in charge of his life. He doesn't know how to relax. And that's why he does the sessions. And so I've seen him twice. The first time we sessioned for 3 hours. And I'd like to say that he didn't go into subspace, but he enjoyed it enough to want to keep going. And so we agreed to do the 24-hour session. But it wasn't until towards the end, like towards the last hour of that session, where I broke him. And I mean broke him in the sense of I pushed him so hard into, I guess, like bending his tolerance, not necessarily crossing his boundaries, but I pushed him past his limits, if that makes sense.
So you finally let go a little bit?
Yeah, and so I could see how he switched and kind of like became a different person, and was really trying to get control back. But then I started noticing that he was like going out of it, like his blood sugar was dropping. So at that point, like towards the end, I was like, oh, okay, now it's time to like slow things down, and he was suspended. So I was like, all right, I'm describing every little step, like, hey, I'm bringing you down. Okay, your feet are going to be touching the ground, just so that he doesn't go into shock or anything. And this is also a hard part too. And even when I was on the other side, it's like when someone else is calling my safe words or saying, hey, we're stopping the scene. It's like, no, I can do it. I can take it. And it's like trying to prove yourself and also showing like, hey, I came here to please you and I want to impress you. And also reminding them like, hey, you did a great job. I'm just recognizing these cues and I want to make sure that I don't break you because I want you to be healthy. I want you to be able to keep coming back. I don't want to destroy you. I don't want to create any harm. And so I did not let him go from the bondage because I knew that he was going to do certain things without thinking really. And so I was like, hey, we're just going to sit here for a moment. I got some fruit. I was like, all right, I'm going to feed this to you. And so shortly after that, I could see, okay, he's coming back to his energy. He was starting to like nod off. That's how far he was going. And the nodding off, I was like, oh, that's not good. But once he started coming back to it, he was like, oh gosh, like, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Like, because he was going to the point of like, I'll do anything for you. I'll do anything. Even like the things that was going to cross boundaries. And so I don't renegotiate it during a scene because inhibitions drop when the endorphins go up and everything.
Yeah.
And so he was like begging to do certain things that were that would go against his boundaries. And I kept telling him no. And then once he came back to it, he was like, thank you so much for not allowing me to do that. I'm glad I didn't do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so at the end of it, he was also in chastity. So he was in chastity the day before at the start of the scene. He was telling me at the end of it, everything, like after he took a shower, we're getting stuff together or whatever. He was like, it is very rare for me to go into subspace. And he is somebody that has traveled the world in a session with many, many DOMs. And I asked him how many DOMs he sessioned with. And he said about 60. 60 DOMs he's worked with. And I was like, all right, how many DOMs have been able to take you into subspace? And out of those 60, he said 6. About 6. And I'm one of them. And then he told me about how I was different from the others. And the difference was he was surprised that I didn't take him out of chastity as soon as we were going into scene. I'm like, do you really think I'm going to allow you to sleep in the cage and just take you out of chastity so you can jerk off while I'm sleeping? No. No. And like you're here to please me, and your dick doesn't mean shit to me. And so I took him out of chastity after we were done with the scene. And so that's what really got him. And he's like, I was expecting this. Everybody has released me at a certain time in the middle of a scene. And so I was like, you may not recognize it, but this is what the lessons are. What I was telling you about mindfulness and teaching them how to listen to their body and just all these things. And he's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was happening. I was like, yep, that's what I'm doing. Teaching you discipline, teaching you all these things, teaching you to listen to your body.
What would you say are some of your other specialties?
Specialties. I would say psychological play is one of them. Hang on, my cat's crying. I'm going to let him in. Hey, bud. Psychological play. Impact play. I really love impact play. Electric play. Foot worship. Trampling.
And do you have any like favorite toys?
Good toys. Yeah. Floggers, paddles, anything electric. My hands. I'm sure there's many. I just can't think off the top of my head. I anything with impact.
I think,
the device is pretty awesome too.
I remember you talked about electricity and touching your hands in the documentary that we did.
Yeah. Any like sensation play. I love doing like sensory deprivation. Because it like heightens awareness and being able to identify different sensations and recognizing like how the body is responding to certain things. And playing with that.
And what is your favorite thing about being a dominatrix or being in the dungeon environment?
My favorite thing about being a dominatrix is really taking the tools that I've learned to better my life and teaching others to tap into their finding ultimate wholeness and happiness, learning how to be present, understanding their bodies, how to be happy. The biggest one is that. I recognize this is a big thing that I'm starting to recognize too, and this is going into my self-empowerment coaching stuff that I'm developing, but I've recognized that because, oh, wait, hold on, let me back up. I have been told several times, and this may be the universe bringing this up, and I don't believe in coincidences anymore. I'm sure that this is part of the reason why the universe is bringing this to my attention, but I had somebody tell me about how suicides are more common with men than it is for women, which I would have assumed it was the other way around. And so I did more research on that. There were several things that were coming up, and it was like I don't remember what the percentage was, but it was more men, way more men committing suicide than women. And so, I mean, a lot of women are having their struggles too, but there's also like our social construct of how we're supposed to be, masculine or feminine or whatever, our genders or gender roles and bullshit like that. In actuality, it's a duality. We all have masculine and feminine energies. It's one side might be higher than the other, but we all have both. And so if we're rejecting one side, we're not balanced. And so I can imagine a lot of these men that I have worked with, a lot of them, almost all of them are working through shame and trying to identify themselves, and based off of their upbringing, they're like, everything I'm doing is wrong. I'm a fucking freak. There's something wrong with me. I'm not supposed to be this way. Or even I don't do any form of like penetration. Not that I'm against it or anything. I don't do pegging. But like even like feminization or sissification, whatever you want to call it. There's one person that comes to mind. And this person, like I've seen several times, and this person is in and out of the community. It happens. There's times where people will go into it and then they're like, oh, fuck, what did I do? And this person in particular was like, I'm black. I'm a man. I am not allowed to dress like a woman. I can't be seen as gay. Even though this person wasn't like necessarily attracted to men, which it doesn't matter. Like to me, I was like, whatever. If you like men, women, whatever, who cares? But like, because of the community or the culture that he's grown up in, and he was like, this is the way I'm supposed to be. I have to hide these things, even from his own wife. He's hiding these things. Hi, bud. My kitty's giving me emotional support right now. I'm trying to be a part of this discussion here. But he's just like, I am not allowed to be this way. I can't be this way. And so he would go back and forth of like wanting to dress up and put on makeup and all that stuff. But then he would pull out of like, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. And it's a common thing. Religious trauma, whatever it is. There's certain things of like, I am supposed to be this way because society tells me I'm supposed to be this way. I can't be emotional because I'm a man. I can't be this way because of blah, blah, blah. Even my own upbringing, I was not allowed to be emotional. I was not allowed to express my emotions. I had to suppress them. And through my trauma and all my experiences, I was forced to be like masculine. And it's taken me a while. Like even now, I'm having to unlearn things that I've learned, and I'm tapping into my other side, my softness, my grace. I have my fierce side, but I'm tired of being like having to go into survival mode all the time and having to fucking fight for myself and and it's just trying to tap into both sides and finding that balance. And so I see a lot of men that are suffering because of this. And so this is part of my coaching program to help people recognize.
Like repressing the shadow side.
Yeah. And it's normal to have that as a man. It's normal to have the feminine side. Okay, so I'm seeing somebody new right now. And this person has gone through not exactly the same thing that I've gone through, but the awakening in the sense of recognizing, oh shit, you know what? I've been living this way because society has told me this is how I'm supposed to live. I had my whole future planned and it backfired pretty much. And the thing that I find highly attractive about this person is he's a strong man. He's very masculine, but I can also see his feminine side. And I'm not saying like he dresses up or anything like that, but he is in tune with, he's highly emotionally intelligent. So he'll say like, I'm still working on myself. I try and blah, blah. But like his self-control and discipline is so sexy. And he recognizes emotions. And when I communicate with him, I feel seen and heard instead of like rejected because of these emotions. Oh, I can't feel this way. I can't feel this way. So he's tapping into the other side and he's finding that balance. And because of that, I am able to connect with him. I can't connect with people that have a lack of emotional intelligence. And when somebody has their ego in the way, they're not ready to receive the message. They're going to reject it as if you're attacking them, as if you're this horrible person, because it's like scratching on a chalkboard or a broken record. It's like, nope, reject, reject, reject. That's why it's so important to recognize, you know what? I feel really uncomfortable in this situation. I am fucking pissed right now. Why am I fucking pissed? And so even now, like there's certain things that'll just set me off, like triggers. And I'm like, all right, take a moment to breathe. What is this lesson right now? What am I resisting? Because a lot of things that I've resisted were things that I needed to learn about how to improve myself. How am I supposed to respond to this? How do I be patient? How do I do these things? And yeah, it's a lot has to do with the grace. So whenever you feel anything, it's like, oh, I don't like this. Oh, I'm uncomfortable. Why? It's important to do a root cause analysis type of thing. Why? Why is this happening? Why do I feel this way? You know, for me, my religious stuff, like, or my spirituality, and that night that I had that awakening, I also recognized why I rejected God for so long. And I'd say the universe, but I saw it as something different. But the word God, it didn't resonate with me, and I disliked the word.
There's a lot of baggage.
There is. And it's just like anything, good could be tainted. People can corrupt whatever is good. Anything. And like for me, I'm majoring in communication studies, and I told you my therapist has said I'm a therapy smarty pants. I am constantly trying to understand how the human mind works and how to better myself, how to expand from that, how to help other people to connect with themselves. And like when in that moment I recognized, okay, you know what? I had religious trauma growing up. I was told I'm a fucking walking taboo board, Danny. I'm a walking taboo board. I was pagan for as long as I can remember. I still consider myself as pagan. I do pole fitness. So a lot of people are like, oh, are you a stripper? Not to say that there's anything wrong with that. I just don't resonate with that. And then, you know, my domination. There's some people like, oh, whoa, like, oh, are you a prostitute? Not that there's anything wrong with that, or escort work. I just don't resonate with that.
Right.
But so all of that, like as a child, even as a child, I was told I was going to hell. I was also extremely gothic. I wore a lot of dark colors, and I was very intimidating. And it scared people. And so like, oh, you're going to hell. You're Satan's child, whatever, all this fucked up shit. And then they're like telling me you need to do these things. And I'm like, you guys are all fucking hypocrites. Where are my caretakers? And you guys are fucking off and doing some other stupid shit. And you're not even aligning with love. And then you're judging me.
Right. Yeah.
And so I rejected it for so long because of that. And there's a lot of things that I realized that I was rejecting that I wish I wasn't rejecting, because part of it's like I could have had more of a connection with my mom. I could have had more connection of certain things, but I rejected it because it didn't align with me because of the abuse and stuff that I had dealt with. I was trying to protect myself. But once I had that vision, I was like, oh, well, fuck. You can call it Allah. You can call it the divine. You could call it God, the infinite, whatever you want to call it. It has infinite names. But ultimately, it's all one, and we're a part of it. It's inside of us. It's inside of everything.
Some kind of like a superior intelligence, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and the more that I align with it, the more that I connect with it, the more that I listen to my intuition, the more the signs become clearer. I'm communicating. My friends like to say I'm in constant prayer with the universe. And interestingly enough, I declared as a Baha'i. I don't know if you heard about the Baha'i faith, but it's something that my ex-husband introduced me to, and I didn't even know what it was until a month before I was about to get married. Surprise! And it created a lot of chaos, to the point where I almost was like, "Hey, fuck you, or fuck this marriage, or whatever," because it required having to ask my parents for permission, and I don't speak to my biological father. I've cut him out of my life. I've given him several chances, and he's just not. He's a man child, is what it is. He just hasn't learned. He doesn't hold any accountability. He thinks there's nothing wrong with him, and he's also very religious. He's part of my trauma, my religious trauma. But I discovered the Baha'i faith through my ex-husband, and when things were falling apart, I was like, I am willing to try anything to make it work. And my mom and my stepdad, I didn't know, they never seemed like they fought. They fucking shared a cell phone, dude. They shared a cell phone. And they would take turns using it, and they'd like use, and my parents are deaf. So like, or my mom was deaf, but yeah. So like my mom would have her iPad while like my stepdad would go to work, and they would take turns like, oh, hey, you're going to be home? Cool. You can have the iPad and I'll take the phone. But ultimately they were constantly connected, so they could see everything they were doing. And so that's like the ultimate form of trust right there. And I asked my stepdad about my mom and all these things. The funny thing is there were some experiences that happened before she died. Like I had telepathic experiences with my mom, and he was confirming all of these things that had happened. But he was talking about, I was like, did you guys ever fight? Because I'm trying to figure out how the fuck are you guys making your marriage work, and what the fuck am I doing wrong in all my relationships? And so he was like, oh yeah, we fought. The thing is that they would take a moment, and he said that they would pray on it, and you can call it whatever you want to call it, meditation or whatever, but like really ultimately they were connecting with their higher self, the source, and recognizing like, are my actions aligned with love, or is it aligned with hate? And so it's really just rechecking themselves and trying to analyze where we're at, or where they were at. And so at that point, they would figure out like what they needed to do. They were not the problem. It's not like you and me against each other. It's, hey, we're a team and we have this problem here. How do we resolve this problem together? And they were easily able to work through it. And so I went back to my ex-husband. I was like, oh, I'm willing to try all this stuff. I'll go to the Baha'i faith. I'll go do this. And when I started going, wow, all this truth was unraveling, and I really found out who he was. All this truth was coming out way more than I was expecting to.
Oh.
And when I started going, a lot of the writings connected with my vision. And the Baha'i faith is like, they're saying their motto is one race, one humanity, one God. And so, and one religion. And I say one religion, not just, it's just the Baha'i faith. What they say is, or the Baha'i faith says that all religions are connected. You can call it spirituality, whatever, it's all connected. And they're talking about different forms of manifestations. You can talk about Jesus, you talk about Buddha, you talk about Krishna, talk about Abraham, you name it, all of them. They were all a prophet in that time and that period, that era of what type of, I can't think of the word, like what they needed during that timeline. Like each time, like 1,000 years or whatever, it's changing. Like our culture is totally different now in comparison to when Jesus was existing or whatever. So we need something different now. And in the Baha'i faith, the latest manifestation was Baha'u'llah. And so what they're saying is like all of these religions it's technically think about different cultures and different languages. And there's a cultural gap. And there's like a different layer of meaning to it. That like, let's talk about sign language or ASL and English. If I were to start signing something about like an English idiom, I have to, if this person is not really aware of like English or has a strong point in English, like they're going to miss I can't just say the idiom. And then like, oh yeah, they're going to understand it. I have to actually, what does it mean? What does the idiom mean? And so once I describe what it means, it's not funny. There's no humor in it because I've already, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
So there's a cultural gap that I'm not able to translate unless if this person is familiar with these idioms or whatever it is, the metaphors or certain things. And so there's certain levels in different cultures that have different meaning to it. And so the way that I see it is that all these religions have their different cultural aspect to it. But ultimately, they all lead to the same message. And it's love. People are so fucking busy and trying to prove who's fucking right and wrong. And like, your God's wrong, my God's right. It's this and this. And it's like, that's how our system is set up. Our system is set up to have us choose a side, to go against each other, to fight against each other. We're supposed to work together. And so even like my paganism, it's still a part of me. It's all a part of me. I had Krishna come up to me in a meditation. And like, I guess I had like a Kundalini experience, the awakening. So it's all tied together. I see the pieces, but I'm open to receiving now. Whereas before I was like rejecting it all. And you know, the more that I've like connected with this, oh my gosh, the guy that I met, I would have never met him if I didn't declare as a Baha'i. And he is the healthiest person I've ever dated in my life. It is so weird.
I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
How should someone approach you for a session or even the coaching that you mentioned? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So the best way to reach out to me for a BDSM session, and then also like self-empowerment coaching or accountability coaching, I can be reached in the same place. Ultimately, the best place to get to me is through my website and filling out an application. And as long as it aligns with my boundaries or doesn't go against my boundaries, then I'll respond. But if the person's asking for something that goes against it and clearly hasn't looked at my limits, I won't respond to it. I will say for anybody that is new to me, because I'm making this shift and all these changes occurring, I am now requiring a minimum of a month's notice for anybody that's new to me, because there's the screening process, it takes time. And then any regulars, it's 2 weeks minimum notice. But as for the coaching, for now, I would say just go through my Miss Crimson Rush. It's MissCrimsonRush.com. That's the best way. And right now I am in the process of creating another website and creating content. I didn't mention this, but I'm no longer creating fetish content, and I'm shifting all my editing skills and content creating skills into educational content, and that'll be coming out soon. It's called Dominate Your Brain.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to looking at that.
Thank you. And that's where I'm going to be like sharing even like on my personal stuff, like really merging my worlds. Kind of scary, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. Yeah. And all your support of the magazine and my photography and everything.
Yeah, you're awesome. You're a badass, dude. I certainly appreciate you and Brittany.
Sinical magazine.